Okay, hello. Welcome to episode 5 of
Episode
Go.
4.
Episode 4.
Yes.
Okay, well, you evidently can tell that I'm keeping track of things. Go me. Yeah, so welcome everybody. This is episode 4 of Happy Go Anime.
Yep.
Yeah, this is it. This is an episode that we've been waiting for quite a while because, well, it's time to finally discuss your thoughts, Ary, on the legendary series known as Fooly Cooly Season 1.
Yep.
So we've watched all 6 episodes in the first series, and it's an anime that you've never watched before, and it's quite a popular one, as people know. And when you told me that you hadn't seen it, I was astounded, offended, hurt, confused, bewildered,
Well,
and angry, and emotional, a bit nostalgic, and then I got a bit hungry. So yeah, that's how I felt, and I summed it up in the sentence of, well, we need to fix that, and we fixed it, and yeah, so I've watched the series time and time again. I think that was like the 7th time I've probably watched this series now when I watched it with you. And everyone who I've watched it with has always had something slightly different to say, although they follow across the same theme, which is that the anime is good. And I know you feel the same way. There were certain characters who you certainly liked and disliked more than others. But that partly because one of those characters follows the trope that you despise most of all. So
we'll get to her.
Yeah, we'll get to her. I'll let you do most of your thoughts on it because you're the newbie in this regard. And yeah, then we just have a lovely, happy, lucky discussion about some anime.
Yeah. So I feel as though we should talk a bit about it without spoilers.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Then so that at least people who haven't seen it can at least hear some stuff we have to say about it. And then we can delve into spoilery stuff. But there's also something I want to discuss before the spoilery stuff.
Okay.
Which we will get to when we get to it. So, yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I really, really did. It was very confusing. It
is a very confusing anime.
Yeah, it leaves you in the dark for a lot of it, and then even when it clears up, you're still left like, wait, what? It was quite an experience, really.
What was it? I mean, like it's definitely it's definitely certainly an experience because there's so many like just bonkers things that happen in the anime, and sometimes it can be perhaps a bit difficult to follow because it's so fast and there's so much going on at once. So like for example, like the overarching story, it kind of gets to the point where like some major plot points, perhaps why people are doing the things that they want to do, are kind of like revealed in just like a quick conversation in like episode 5 or 6, and then it just goes on to some insane explosive scene done by Trigger's animation.
Yeah, and a lot of it is hard to tell if like things are really happening or not, because some of the stuff is like, I don't know how much of it is. I mean, I'm pretty sure one of the characters is. They pretty much say one of the characters is dead, and then they just bring him back to life, don't they?
Yes. Yeah, pretty much.
It's just like, yeah, okay, it doesn't matter that he was dead, he's just alive again. Sure, why not? And
yeah.
So I don't know how much of it is supposed to be like literal events and how much of it is supposed to be.
Which character was dead? I'm trying to run that through my brain. Was that his dad?
Yeah.
So that wasn't really his dad though. That was a robot.
No, but then they found his dad They found the real dad, like
yeah, but
as like
he was just heavily dehydrated.
Was he? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
They said he was dead. I don't know.
That might have just been like, oh my god, is he dead? It's just like
maybe it was
statement sort of thing.
Maybe
because
it
bear in
was.
mind, like once he was, sorry, I keep interrupting. But it's one of those things where like when he's in the bathtub, like he then washes in normal
Yeah,
water and
I
then he
know,
wakes up.
but I feel as though I can't remember what the line. I feel as though I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. It's all a bit of a blur. But I feel
That
as
episode's
though
the weakest one.
Naota or someone said that like he found his dad's corpse under the sink or something like that. It's like, and it might have been like obviously corpse doesn't have to mean literal corpse. It could just mean
Yeah,
someone in a corpse-like state kind of thing. So maybe that's what I meant.
possibly.
So I don't know. But I also might have been that just wasn't what was said, and I've just forgotten because there's so much happens in such a short span of time. But yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of things just occur, and it's hard to figure out what to make of it all. Especially after one watch, I definitely feel as though this is the kind of series where the more you watch it, the more you will pick up.
Yeah, even
Um,
if it's just like little things.
and so after just a single watch, it's hard to get all my thoughts in order. I did watch some videos. I watched Mother's Basement's video entitled "It's Okay to Feel Stupid," and I watched Digiro's video on why he likes Mammy Me best.
I actually
And
agree with that, with his video on that as well. I probably think that she's one of, if not my favorite character.
spoilers for if we talk about it later, but Mammy Me is my favorite character. And I really appreciated that video because it felt like it put into words why she was my favorite character
Yeah,
that I couldn't figure out how to articulate myself. Because I wasn't really sure how to express why she appealed to me so much. And then I watched that and I was like, yes, that's why. I don't know. I think I generally liked all the characters though.
yeah,
I don't think there was a character that I distinctly disliked. There were some characters that I wasn't really fussed about, like Naota's dad was just kind of there and stuff, but I didn't dislike him at all. He was just not as engaging as any of the main characters, kind of thing.
I don't really think this type of anime as well, like, because it seems to be like a real coming of age anime. Like the adults don't necessarily really, they don't really matter as much because a lot about it is, you know, like a coming of age sort of thing for, well, the three characters I can think of are Naota, Manami, and I don't remember her name because I'm always so bad at names. You know, the his friend who's the girl.
Ninamori.
Yes, her.
Yeah.
Like those are probably the characters where they get, you know, this huge amount of development based around them and based around like growing up and, well, their own individual stories as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. It's very much about them and not about the adults, which is why they seem to have less impact on less influence over the events of the series.
Yeah.
I also don't know how much of things mean other things necessarily and what those other things can mean. If we go to episode 4, obviously the phrase swing the bat is used a lot and it could be
Yeah.
interpreted in so many different ways.
Oh yeah. Like you could I mean, if you're gonna go straight away to the lewd thing, I guess you could interpret as having a wank. Just gonna throw that out there. Just gonna drop the tone of the podcast relatively early in. You know, just get in there like 10 minutes early. Just throw that out there.
Well,
If
I
this
mean,
if this ever gets on iTunes, we're gonna not get any money for that statement. But hey ho.
I don't think do you usually get money for podcasts anyway? I don't know.
I've got no idea.
I just tend to assume that podcasts are free.
Well,
So,
this is going to be a franchise one day, Ari. We're going to be at Comic-Con. We're going to be doing panels. It's going to be great. We're going to have, I don't know, we can have Are You Filming Us or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it's not time to talk about our
no,
evil empire right yet. It's time to talk. It's
why are you
anime
evil?
fantastic time.
Right.
Well,
I want to be a good empire. We should break the trend.
there's no such thing as a good empire. You can't have a good
Exactly.
empire.
No, you
Yeah,
can.
but when you say an empire, you instantly think, "Oh dear, that's not good." If you say, I don't know,
Exactly. So we
like a good kingdom,
got to subvert that trope.
maybe.
Make
All
the
right, we'll
empire
have
good
an
for
empire,
once.
but we'll be a good empire, and we'll have an empire instead of shooting bullets, we shoot anime figurines, but it's probably arguably worse. Just imagine that you've probably just got like
No, just break the
an
figurines.
AK-47 shooting like 1,000 like Naruto figurines at you at once. All those different little Narutos just shooting at you, and every time the gun shoots, it just says "believe it." It's just like believe it, 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 believe it.
I can't imagine much worse, to be honest.
War never changes.
I think it does.
What a
If that's where
dreadful,
we're going, then
what a dreadful image that is. And all the soldiers Naruto running. Oh God. What an awful, awful future.
okay, let's not make an empire.
Let's not. All right. Let's not franchise at all. Let's just quit while we're ahead. I forgot where we were. Episode 4.
Yeah, we're talking
Swing
about
the bat.
swinging
There
the
we
bat.
go.
I was going to say that. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that could be interpreted sexually without ever being explicitly sexual, which, like, the phrase "furikuri" itself, especially in the first episode, in the manga scene.
Yeah. That's bonkers.
It is. We'll get to the animation and stuff later, because the animation things are just crazy and all over the place and pretty amazing, really, when all's said and done. But like just the phrase "furikuri," at least in its context in the first episode, could almost certainly have sexual connotations. But it's all left up to interpretation.
Okay.
So, and then Haruko's relationship with Naoto's dad, stuff like that, obviously isn't, in terms of the literal events of the show, isn't sexual in nature, but the way it's talked about and the way it impacts Naoto and his view of and relationship with Haruko could also be sexual in nature. So there's a lot of stuff that could be interpreted sexually, but isn't explicitly being like, this is about sex. It's just, it is. So, swing the bat definitely can mean that.
Oh yeah.
Um,
You sound so uncomfortable when you say swing the bat, because now you can think about is what I said.
well, no, but
The anime's got loads of different like sexual innuendos which you can interpret.
yeah,
But because it is a coming of age thing, and the younger characters in particular, like they are around that age where puberty starts to kick in. So you can interpret some of it as perhaps the beginning of puberty, like they're developing this sense of where they belong, where they go from here, like what their future begins. They start adulting, and that means that their life starts going downhill, because that's what it means to be an adult, kids. It all goes downhill.
But there's other ways to interpret these things as well, which I quite like.
Yeah.
Because swing the bat can obviously just be essentially akin to grab life by the horns. Just
That's true.
do it. Just whatever it is you're hesitating about, whatever it is that's holding you back from doing what you want to do, just do it. So there's, yeah. I mean, I'm talking really basic stuff here, I imagine, because
I mean, this isn't going to be like a full in-depth review analysis and like a video essay on it. But
No,
as you said as well,
very
like the
much
first
not.
time you watch it,
Yeah, there's no way you can from just one watch like
Yeah,
get
absolutely
into
not.
the full
I mean, you could definitely
intent
spend like
behind the
ages,
series.
ages, and ages and ages looking at different like analyses,
Yeah.
reviews, like essays. It's such it's in the same boat I think as Evangelion in the sense that it can be so heavily interpreted in these different regards and what these certain scenes mean.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Furikuli, Progressive, and Alternative perhaps follow that same effect, if they perhaps answer some questions that were up for interpretation with the original series, if it downgrades it, if it pushes it forward. It's difficult to say within those second seasons, but people spend a very long time discussing and interpreting what each individual scene or episode can mean in some regards.
Mm.
I know that the general consensus that episode 4 where he finds his dad as a like corpse? Is it that
Yeah.
episode? I mean, I know that's typically regarded to be the weakest episode. I know you said the same as well, and frankly, I don't actually enjoy that episode in any way whatsoever. I actually don't look forward to that episode when I rewatch it because I find it to be so boring.
Fair enough.
What was your favourite episode from the series?
Oh, that's a tough one. Because mostly, I would say it's episode 3, apart from the stupid bit at the end. I really, really enjoyed episode 3. I also really liked episode 2.
Episode 2 is a lot of fun because you get that great fight scene at the end
Yeah.
where Naruto gets eaten by Candy, and then he turns into a giant cannon for no reason, which is just insane. And that's what I mean, that's what I typically like my anime to be like a lot of the time. If it's just this is impossible, this is insane, these characters are insane, this is brilliant. And that fight scene definitely fills in that type of regard. But then again, I guess an anime about a pink-haired woman driving a Vespa who her appearance to the main character is running him over and then smacking him in the head with a guitar is also a bit insane.
Yeah, very true.
I think that's like one of my favourite scenes in the whole anime, where that first happens, and then you get like that spinning camera effect around Manami, and she's like, "Wow!"
Yeah, that shot is amazing. That shot is so good. It's like,
God, I want to rewatch it. Should we just cancel the podcast and just rewatch the anime again?
we could do, except that you're busy soon.
We've got a fan base to cater for as well. We need to make sure that we don't let them down.
Well,
We got you, anime luckies. That's the name of our fans, the happy luckies. There we go, the happy luckies. I'll get t-shirts ordered right now. We'll order 50,000. They'll sell out in minutes.
Okay. I'm happy with happy luckies, if that is what you want.
God, can you imagine if we started going around at expos and they start like, yeah, I'm a happy lucky, and then they turn into like they become as disliked as like the home base fandom, and then it's like, no, what have we done? Everything I create, it just becomes something awful.
Yeah. Let's just hope that doesn't happen then.
They come in wearing like horns or Ary and Max face masks. Like, oh God.
No one is getting a mask of my face, thank you very much.
I think everyone should get a mask of our faces. Half your face, half my face.
No, I don't
Let's make
want
this really scary.
I don't want pictures of my face out there. I don't know how you're expecting me to do panels. It's fine, I'll just wear a mask.
Yeah, you could be like Yoko Taro and just wear a mask the whole time.
Yeah, that'll work. I'll do that.
And I'll wear a mask as well, but it'll be of your face.
What? No, don't.
Oh, that'd be insane. What else about that? Because I know you've got loads of notes.
Yeah. I was going to
your...
say, talking about fight scenes, the fight scene at the end of episode 6 is ridiculous and gorgeous and incredible. And just the whole thing looks stunning, and I loved it.
The classic Trigger.
Well, was it Gynax at the time? Well, I mean,
Gynax
it obviously
at the
wasn't
time.
Trigger, because Trigger was in, like, I I can't remember when Trigger was established, but it was way later on. Like, might have been early 2010s, like 2010, 2011.
Why do I keep calling them Trigger then?
I don't know, because the Trigger style.
Yes, that's it.
I mean,
Sorry.
Trigger is made of some of the people that moved from Gainax and continued their style of things of like Furikuri and is it Gunbuster is the second one? Whichever the second top word Nerai is.
I think it's Gunbuster, yeah.
And then Gurren Lagann, and the Trigger like took that aesthetic and continued with it in stuff like Kill la Kill and Space Patrol Lulico and Little Witch Academia and hopefully upcoming Promare. I'm really excited for Promare, but
I've never seen people so excited over a teaser image of an anime.
I'm really, really excited. I don't know, when it's by the people who've done Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill, I can't help but be excited because they're both incredible series. But yeah, so we can start talking spoilers in a moment, but before we do, okay, this was my main thing that I wanted to discuss, that I thought about when I was thinking about we should have a section, because some comments that we got back from the Kill la Kill episode were that we stuck spoilers like 10 minutes into that episode, and so people who didn't want spoilers for the series could only watch 10 minutes.
Okay, that's a completely fair enough piece of feedback. Thank you, people.
And so I thought we should have a big chunk of it that isn't spoilers, so that people can listen to more of it. And then what I wanted to say here was, in regards to Furikuri specifically, how much do spoilers spoil Furikuri? Because I didn't let you know this, and I didn't let anyone know this, really, necessarily. I knew the kind of what Haruko's intent was from the beginning, because I'd seen it in another video. I knew what she was about, and it didn't spoil anything for me in the slightest. Now, obviously, everyone's different, but how much do you think the overarching narrative of the plot is important to a series like Furikuri, which I personally feel is far more about the experience and the smaller stories within the overarching plot? Because I feel as though the plot itself is just like a framework for the events for the events that happen, if that makes sense, and it isn't actually necessarily relevant to your experience of, like, your enjoyment of the story. I don't know how you feel about that. What do you think?
I actually kind of completely agree with you, because first of all, you hit it very well that you kind of knew what she was about from the get-go. A fun fact about watching anime with Ary is that when it's an anime that she's showing me and I've seen a moment that I think's insane, I'm very explosive and all over the place. I'm like, wow! And Ary's there just like, wow, look at that. And when it's an anime that I'm showing her, it is dead silence. And then occasionally she'll finish off with going, what the fuck was that? So that was pretty much the whole experience of Furikuri, apart from episode 3, where it ended and she went, what the fuck is that? And the tone of it was completely different, because I was like, oh no, she's angry. Okay, yeah. She's angry. Whoopsie doodle. In answer to your question, I don't actually... I think you could have the whole series, like, run... Because it's so short, in the sense it's only 6 episodes, it's difficult to kind of give you, like, a brief description of the anime. Because if you were to go into detail about it and say, all right, there's a young boy, he gets run over by a girl, and then a guitar hits his forehead, and then he can sprout robots out of his forehead, you've got yourself at that point like a good chunk of a spoiler, even if it is pretty much like the introduction on episode 1 and part of episode 2. But it's more the fact that it's such a character-driven anime compared to a story-driven anime that I'd say it would be more of a spoiler if you read up a essay on the individual characters or the themes of the show more than the actual plot, because the plot itself is, frankly, it's a pretty, standard plot. Realistically, it's boy
Yeah.
meets girl, fights monsters. That's pretty much it. And if you go into any more details, then you start learning a bit more about the individual characters. But the fact that you see these individual characters and their reactions and their interactions with each other, that's more about what Furikuri is about, like the
Yeah.
themes of these characters and coming of age. As I've said that a few times, I know.
Mhm.
Uh, I would say it's more character driven than the actual plot itself, and that's why it's so interesting. Is because you've got so many characters to look into and interpret into, and discuss their relations with other characters and their relationships with other excuse me, their relationships with other characters and what they mean to each other and how you can relate to them. Because at least one of the characters, at least one of the human characters, you can definitely relate to in some regard on some level. I don't really think many people would be able to relate to Haruko that much, to be honest, because she's an alien who's after something. Although I guess you can interpret that as people are hunting something at all times, maybe. Um, but yeah, short answer is I don't really think it matters too much if the plot is spoiled to you, as long as you don't have the characters as a whole spoiled to you and what their intentions and personalities and their journeys are. I feel
Yeah.
like that would ruin Furikuri more.
I think it's
Um,
also to do with the presentation of the story, because even if you know beat for beat what's going to happen, like someone's told you, okay, this is the events of episode 1, this is the events of episode 2, this is the events of episode 3, etc., then actually watching them and seeing those events unfold is completely different from just hearing someone talk about them,
yeah,
because of the incredibly over the top animation and the direction and just the way everything is done. Like you'd never expect, if someone just told you the events, you'd never expect the manga scene, the manga panel scenes,
no,
and their craziness, just ridiculous speed, and just like what on earth is going on here.
I mean, it wouldn't really work either, because if I said to you, yeah, this anime's got a manga scene, for example, where they go from panel to panel and they keep saying these words like, and they keep having like a discussion in the background. You've got an old man going, like going, kuri, 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 and it's really funny. You'll just go, right, okay,
Yeah,
go away, leave
just
me alone. That doesn't
just
sound good at all.
it's not even that. It's just saying that, even from that description. Um, for if someone listening hasn't seen it and hears that description, what they get from what you just said, even though what you said is accurate, is not at all
No,
what it actually is when you see it firsthand.
because
Um,
all of that scene like works together so nicely, because you have the sharp jumpiness of frame to frame, you've got the music as well, you've got the characters talking over each other, so it's really difficult to keep track of what's going on. You probably need to rewatch it a few times to actually understand what they're talking about to begin with, because they're like, right, so what? The only thing I got out of that scene is that the granddad knows how to make bread. like and that's what I got out of that scene when I first watched it the first two times, because the rest of it I was like, what's going on? uh it's there's so many different moments in that anime where if you don't follow it closely, I mean, you have to follow it super closely on your first watch to get everything, but it happens at such a speed and such a rate that it's almost like a real conversation in some regards, because if you're sitting with like a crowd of people, and you're having conversations, and then some person talks over another and one person talks over another as well, and trying to keep track of everything at once can be difficult. And you could be having a conversation with one other person, I could be having a conversation with another person in the background, and trying to focus on everything at once is quite confusing. So it makes it a bit more human in some regard. I mean, the actual conversation topics are very strange, and you wouldn't have a random person just currently just sit down eating noodles with you. Uh, but like it's got loads of these different scenes where you're just that's really weird. That's just so strange. Like even Narrator's like school friends just generally talking to him about stuff that's happened in the world, and they talk so quickly and over the top of each other as well. So trying to keep track of what they're saying can be a bit tricky as well. But it just adds up to the charm with it, and it just makes you want to rewatch it more because you want to like consume everything.
Yeah.
And I think the fact it's only 6 episodes as well really throws it to a benefit because it's like, well, only 6 episodes, about 20 minutes, half an hour each. Okay, that's about 3 hours realistically. Like the anime is probably only about three and a half, like 4 hours sort of thing. So it's a lot more enticing and a lot more. The idea of watching that is a lot more appealing than watching a 24 episodes anime again, for example.
Yeah, it's just it's much easier to consume.
Yeah.
So it's something you could just sit down. It's not much longer than a movie.
No, not really. Like it is actually the length of a long movie. So I think that if people enjoy anime, they should definitely give it a watch because it's such a, beg your pardon, it's such a short spread of episodes. That I think as well that like you don't even have to watch them necessarily in one go. You could actually still, because even though the story can be quite difficult to follow as a whole, a lot of the episodes are quite self-contained, apart from towards the end, perhaps, where they more follow into each other, and then you could perhaps spread it apart a bit more. So like we waited a week between each episode because that's our timetable.
Yeah.
But that still didn't necessarily perhaps distract from the story. Like it's not something that we have to binge watch at once.
Yeah. Very much. Also, something that you briefly touched on when talking about that scene and should definitely be mentioned in regards to this series is the music, which is so good. Oh my god.
So good. Oh my god, the pillows are so good. They come back to do the music, I think, for Progressive and Alternative as well, I think. And I actually listened to a track of theirs for Progressive on YouTube, and it's just so good. Like it's just their sound is so like punky and angry rock sort of thing, but it's just so good. I'm actually gutted that as of right now, last time I checked was actually yesterday, they weren't available on Spotify, which hurts me. So I have to listen to the Foolie Coolie playlist on YouTube, which isn't my preference, but it's just so. Oh, the music's so good. Whenever there's music in it, you just
yeah.
I love the music.
I have, having been into anime for a while, and so obviously have heard many times about Foolie Coolie, and something people always say is the music, the soundtrack. It's so good. Best soundtrack ever. Obviously, I had very high expectations going into it that this had better be a really damn good soundtrack to live up to that hype.
Yeah.
And it lived up to the hype. It's so good.
I
don't
love this song.
remember the name of my favourite track, which is annoying because it's the name of something else that is that like it's a name that already meant something to me in some other regard. And so I was like, oh, I'll always remember that because it's this thing, and now I've forgotten what it is, which is really frustrating.
I've just looked it up as well on Spotify. The Pillows have got an album called Full On Cool Generation. Now I've got no idea if this is anything to do with Foolie Coolie. It's one album as well, but this makes me happy. Also, good God, they look so old. Jesus, these poor guys.
Well,
They've got a Vespa on their front cover.
20 years.
Jesus Christ, old rock bands, eh? Old rock bands.
But it just has that really coming of age kind of feel. Which is quite a strange way to put it, but it has that. This is where my lack of knowledge of the musical genre distinction comes in, but kind of that like alt rock feel.
Yeah, it's like a very teenage type of feel.
Yeah, it very much brings you back to the kind of music you would listen to in that era of your life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Obviously not for everyone.
I would have definitely listened to that music
Yeah.
back when I was, that age.
I think
100%.
particularly of people of our generation, it's very of its time. And so it really, really suits the kind of themes of the series and the general aesthetic that the series is going for. It blends perfectly with it, and it's so good. And it's weird how a lot of the anime soundtracks I really enjoy are very kind of stereotypically hypey, where it's just stuff like, for anyone that knows them, things like With Your XXX Pierce the Heavens from Gurren Lagann, or All of You Is All of Me from No Game No Life. I'm sure there's so many of them, and I just can't think of any off the top of my head. Just kind of big, exciting songs that are designed specifically to hype you up in the big moments. And the Fully Cooley soundtrack is not that in any way, shape, or form, but it still suits those big climactic moments just as well as the really hypey music, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, it just works really, really well. I love it. I absolutely loved it. So, we talked. Should we do characters a bit?
Yeah, let's do characters a bit. So this will be quite spoiler heavy, contrasting against what I said about talking about the characters almost ruins Fully Cooley. So now we're going to completely disregard what I said, and now we're going to talk about the characters. Who would you like to start off with?
I mean, we could start off with Haruko, because she's like she's kind of like the poster girl of the series, yeah.
Yeah, she's also just cool. I have said in the past that her voice is something that I don't really like, but a couple of people mentioned to me that I was wrong for disliking her voice, and it has grown on me actually quite a bit. It suits her fine, and to be honest, if I had Haruko any other voice, I'd be furious.
Yeah,
I'd be absolutely furious. So
we should mention that we watched the Japanese dub of it, not the English dub.
Absolutely. I've never watched the English dub, so I've got no idea what that is.
I've heard very good things about it, but I still feel it's worth mentioning that because it's one of those, alongside stuff like Cowboy Bebop and things that are kind of classically have very well received dubs. So I think it makes sense to mention which one we watched.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, it's the same voice actress as Nonon from Kill la Kill, and I already like her. She definitely has a distinct voice, I'll say. But I like it. I think it gives her characters a lot of personality.
Yeah.
Because it's so unique in the way it characterizes them. So yeah, I liked Haruko. She was just a lot of fun. She's just so crazy and off the wall for most of the series.
And manipulative in some ways as well.
Yeah, she's definitely manipulative, given her overarching goal, and the fact that it's not apparent what it is for most of the series, and that she essentially just uses people for her own ends, which makes her, I think, more interesting than if she were just kind of crazy and weird, but that she does have her own goals and like motivations, adds a layer of depth to her that other characters that might fit that archetype would want, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do get that. Yeah, I really like her. She is a very cool character. She's a lot of fun. Um, I feel like she's almost like the person as well who also does a lot of good for Naruto, because if it wasn't for her arriving, he wouldn't have had such a major coming of age moment. Because around someone who seems to come across as so much older than him, he acts as the adult. She doesn't. He's having to look after her and her a mess. But she at the same time as well, like, said stuff to him like, well, she basically helped him get over stuff which he was going through quite heavily, particularly stuff with his brother, because he felt quite abandoned by his brother. Like, he didn't have a good role model to look up to in his father. The person who he did look up to, who was his brother, left him for a blonde bimbo in America. Um, so she actually did a lot of good for him, even if she ultimately wanted him just to get to her ultimate goal. But at the same time as well, I feel like it kind of speaks volumes that at the very end of the series, despite everything that happened, she asked him to come with her.
Yeah.
Like, that shows that she perhaps is, she's not human because she's an alien, but she's a bit more of like a human character, that even though she's still manipulative, like, she wants to spend more time with this human because she likes him. Now, you could interpret that she just wants him to take him along to manipulate him some more in the future. But I personally see it as a bit more of a friendship
Yeah,
more
I
than
think
a
so.
selfish need.
I would agree with that interpretation. That I think that for as much impact as Haruko has on Naota, he has some impact on her as well.
Yeah.
So
But not nearly as much impact as he has on Manami.
Yeah.
Good God, that girl. Talking about manipulation, she was literally using him as a, like, filler for his brother, who was her boyfriend, and we saw how much it damaged her when she finally found out that his brother was not coming back from America because he'd fallen in love with someone else.
I think she's not necessarily being manipulative in it, though. I think she's more just she
lonely.
needs someone that she can rely on.
Yeah.
And she needs someone to emotionally support her because she isn't necessarily emotionally mature herself, despite being older than Naota.
Yeah.
And so she both looks for people or things that are dependent on her, but in doing so is also using them as an emotional crutch for herself. So I don't necessarily think that she's being manipulative, but yeah, she's very much using him as a replacement for his brother, which is not remotely fair to him.
But also as well, like, she seems to have a habit of just kind of clinging on to things that she as something to basically, like, help cure her loneliness.
Yeah.
So, like, she spent a lot of time with Naruto, who she calls Takun. She also calls the little cat Takun. She spends a lot of time with Kanti when she thinks it's a god, when it turns out that she is the person who was causing all the arson as well.
Yeah.
But then also as well at the on the final episode where the robot dog comes out and starts eating all of the stuff, all the electronics. She just spends a lot of time with that and just keeps filling that up and making it bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And like, you can tell that she's someone who just needs to be with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. She needs someone to support her, really.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's great over her character arc that she, by the end, she's able to, like, move on and look to support herself by pursuing photography, which is cool. I really liked the way her character arc ended. I don't know what it was specifically that I was drawn to her because she comes across as someone mature when you don't know her. So when you see her in the first episode, and she's just like sitting around smoking and stuff and skipping school, or not mature necessarily, but because obviously it's not mature to smoke and skip school, but like someone who is, she comes across as someone emotionally distant, but then underneath there's a lot of it's what a young person would think of as mature. Like when you're a little kid, and you'd see this older girl who, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Do you get what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do.
It's, but then as you get to know her, she's not remotely mature, and is in fact quite the opposite, and needs a lot of support from someone more mature than her, which I find really interesting, and I like characters that play with that concept, which can bring us onto Ninamori, because I think that Ninamori is, the way I interpreted her character, at the very least, was she's someone who, again, puts on airs of being more mature than she is.
Yeah.
She acts like what she thinks someone who is mature acts like, as though things aren't, you're not supposed to, adults don't show as much emotion and things like that. So if you're being all emotional about stuff that's going on around you, then you're acting like a kid. And so she, despite all the things that she's going through with her parents and stuff like that, she always gives the impression that, yeah, I'm fine. Because when you're young, the idea of being, yeah, I'm fine, is what you think being mature is. Just no matter what happens, if you're like, yeah, I'm fine, I can deal with it, then it gives this impression of emotional maturity, when in reality you're just denying your emotions, which is immature. And I like things that play with that dynamic. And I really liked Ninamori's character arc in regards to that, especially because she did actually mature, and then ended up speaking to her parents about how everything was making her feel, as we saw in one of the later episodes. I forget if it was episode 4, 5, or 6, but in whichever one, they're in like gym class, and the Naota's other two friends are talking to her, and then she just says that she talked to her parents, and then she does the high jump thing. And I like that showed her development. You know what would have worked? If they'd just shown that development and not cut her hair. But, what do I know? I won't harp on about the hair cutting thing. It just bugs me. We did that last episode. We're not going to go into it again.
Yeah.
It just, yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, I liked Ninamori. I liked her story. I liked her character development. I liked the themes behind her story. I enjoyed it.
Good.
And then obviously there's Naota himself, who I liked Naota as well. I liked everyone. I think it had a good cast. I feel that he felt pretty reactive for a lot of the series, until towards the end, where he started being more proactive and doing the things he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Which came to a head at the finale, when Eyebrows was telling him to get away from Haruko, and he's just like chooses not to.
Yeah. Like, all those characters, I think, have got some very strong points that you can, again, interpret hours into. They are all something that makes the anime worthwhile. They carry that anime the whole way through, from a story point of view. and I honestly feel like they're some of the best cast of characters that I've seen in anime for a very long time. And all in all, like Furikuri is always going to be in my top 5 anime. Always. I hope the other 2 series, at least they won't be as good as the first series. They won't, but I hope they do a good follow up. Absolutely. So, yeah, we could spend ages talking about this. We really, really, really could.
We could, yeah.
But I know there's a lot more that we want to say. Unfortunately, I have to disappear. Maybe we'll come back to this in like another episode, perhaps, because I know that you've got loads
I think
more
we
notes.
got through most of my notes, to be
like...
honest. My notes were mostly so that I had stuff to refer back to with like names and events and things. Because episodes 4, 5, and 6 particularly began to not blur together. Like when I think about it, I can tell what happened in each episode. But when I just think about it off the top of my head, I get confused as to the events of each episode. Like, there are certain scenes which in my head feel like they belong to one episode, but actually are from another. So I took lots of notes to make sure I knew exactly what episode was what, so I didn't make any mistakes, and made notes about character names and stuff like that, just so I had it all out. But I feel as though I managed to say pretty much everything I wanted to say.
Well, brilliant. Well, yeah. Sorry to cut this short, everybody. Unfortunately, I've got a bit of a quick rush. I need to go basically be a taxi driver. So sorry about that, everyone, and apologies to you, Ary. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. The podcasts are now going to be up on YouTube because unfortunately SoundCloud hasn't quite worked out for us. We have now got a YouTube channel, and Ary's made some lovely art for it as well.
I'll make better art. I'm not happy with the art we're using at the moment.
I think it's fine, but it's all a work in progress. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us listening. We've both been very looking forward to making this podcast. We've now also officially started on Tengen-Toppa Gurren Lagann. Episode 1 was amazing. And yeah, we'll bring you more episodes in the future. So thank you very much, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.